Good evening, welcome to NUFC Matters. My name is Steve Wraith.
And I'm Malcolm McDonald.
And we're live in Scotswood Social Club. Welcome along to NUFC Matters. A little bit different this week. We're in Scotswood Social Club, myself and Malcolm. No John Gibson this week. He is otherwise engaged. But we've got a good audience and a good crowd in, so it's a little bit different. We're here to entertain the crowd, so we're going to do 45 minutes Q&A with Malcolm, talking about his career at Newcastle United. We'll have a little bit of a break. So the programme, if you're watching on Facebook, will go off for 15 minutes. Then we'll be back for the second half where we'll be talking about Newcastle United and what's going on at St James's Park at the moment. We'll be looking back at the game against Brighton and also looking ahead to this weekend's game against Leicester, where we'll also have the fans involved. We'll also have a special guest on the sofa this week. We've got Paulie Belter, who's a local musician who's making Mike Ashley's life a misery. At least somebody is. Malcolm, great to have you at Scotswood Social Club. We've had a great welcome. Great to be in these surroundings in the heart of Newcastle. Let's talk about how you arrived at St James's Park. You know, how did you become a Newcastle United player?
Well, I was a Luton player in the, and it started in the 3rd division. Thankfully, I was able to get away from Fulham Football Club, which I'd supported as a kid, but when I was actually there as a player, the whole atmosphere was absolutely awful. The manager, it was his first managerial role, was Bobby Robson. And I saw the senior pros really turn on him, and they were sort of looking after themselves. And so they turned on him and on the youngsters, of which I was one. And so Bobby was sacked, and I had just scored 5 goals in 6 games, and I was dropped. And so I played out the rest of the season in the reserve side, but needed away, and I went to Luton, and the manager, Alex Stock, taught me one of the greatest lessons I've ever learnt in my life, and that came on the Friday before the first game, and we weren't sure what the team was actually going to be on that first game, and the coach came down, pinned the team sheet up, and everybody was there, and I was at the back of everybody looking overheads to see if I could see my name on the team sheet, and I couldn't, and I went down to the 4, 5, 6, 7, no, 8, 9, still no. And then 10, 10, McDonald. So I was playing. And so that, I felt great for that. And I was just 19 years of age. And so the coach said, right, just the 11 who are starting the next day, once you sat in numerical order to what you're going to wear tomorrow, and so get yourself sat down, and we'll wait for Alex Stock, who then burst into the dressing room, and he said, right, here we are. He said, first game of a brand new season, and he said, the good people of Luton Town are going to be coming in their droves to watch you lot play, and the least you can do is win some promotion for them. What do you say to that? And so we all dutifully nodded our head, and we went, yeah, let's get promoted. Now, usually managers, it's a taboo subject, being successful come the end of the season, promotion, or you just never mention it. But Alex Stock was quite the reverse, and he just faced things head on right from the word go. And so he planted promotion in our heads, and we were in the 3rd level, and so he said, well, it's good that you all agree that we're going to go for promotion, so now I'm going to tell you how to do it. He said, we've got 46 games in this 3rd division this season, and of those 46 games, we can't afford to lose any more than 9. Now, he said, when it comes to the wins and the draws, they'll look after themselves, but you cannot lose more than 9. Now, to achieve that, he said, at one end, we can only let in the 46 games we've got to play, we can only let in a maximum of 36 goals. Whilst at the other end, we need to score a minimum of 82. Now, he said, you defenders and midfield players, when it comes to keeping the goal tally down against us, I'm not going to tell you how to do that. We'll work on that on a week-by-week basis. He said, but at the other end, he said, I can tell you where those 82 goals are coming from. He said, Tony Reid, goalkeeper, don't expect you to score any goals, but I do expect you to save at least 3 penalties. Right back, John Ryan, you love an overlap, and I've got you down for 5 goals. Jack Bannister, you poo your pants every time you cross the halfway line, but nevertheless, I've got you down for 3. Mike Keane, captain of the side, you love a free kick, and I've got you down for 10. And he went on to the 5 and the 6 and the 7 and the 8, and he got to the 9, who was the most experienced player in the side, a fellow by the name of Laurie Sheffield. And Alex Stock looked at him, he said, Laurie Sheffield, by heavens, old son, you've been about a bit, you've had more clubs than Jack Nicklaus. He said, but nevertheless, he said, you can still run and you can still jump a bit for an old un, and I've got you down for 18. And very quickly, I'm sitting next to Laurie. I thought, well, if he gives the old head 18, he's probably going to give me young legs. Give me the same, maybe 20. Can I get 20 and 46? Yeah, I think I can get 20 and 46. Yeah, so I'm starting to feel quite confident. Yeah, I can get about 20. And Alex Stock, he averted his gaze a few inches from Laurie Sheffield to me, and he said, McDonald, the new boy, 30. And went straight on to the outside left. And I sat there shocked. And I nudged Laurie under the ribs, and I said, Laurie, did I hear him right? Did he say 30? He said, you did hear him right, boyo, and bloody good luck to you. And so the next day, and it was big time stuff at Luton Town down at Kenilworth Road, I can tell you we were playing Barrow Town. But they had to be beat, and beat them we did. We beat them 3-0. I had made 2. But I hadn't scored, and I came into the dressing room after the end of the game in a fit of utter depression. And all I'm thinking is, blimey, I've still got 30 goals to score, and I've only got 45 games in which to get them now. Flipping heck. And players could see me as the youngster in the side. I was under pressure, and they worked great with me in training. And then we went down to Bournemouth the following week. It was 0-0 going into the second half, and midway through that half, Mike Keane, the skipper, he slid a lovely pass between the 2 centre-halves, and I'm away, got onto the ball, just to keep it a beat, went round him, knocked it into the net, and we won by that single goal. But more importantly than winning, I had scored, and I was off that dreaded 30 figure. And all I had now to get was 29. And all of a sudden, life seemed an awful lot easier. And so as the season went on, and I was scoring, and we were winning, that things were really going well. And we got to the last game of the season, and all we needed was a draw. A draw to ensure that we went up. It didn't matter what other results happened on the day. If we got a draw, we were promoted. And as it happens, we went out, we were playing at Mansfield, and we played 10 at the back. And we made sure that they never got a shot on goal, and we got the draw that was needed. It was 0-0. We kicked the ball out the stadium about 20 times. But it worked. And we came into the dressing room afterwards. We were promoted to the 2nd division. And the board of directors, in their absolute generosity had sent 2 bottles of champagne down for all of us in the dressing room to celebrate. And so I poured some champagne into 2 plastic cups, and I went over to the manager, Alex Stock, and I offered him one of the plastic cups, and I said, well, here's to you, boss. You said that we could get promoted, and we certainly did. I've got an apology to make. He said, what's that, old son? I said, well, you told me that I had to get 30 goals, and I beg your pardon, but I only got 29. He said, well, you see, old son, there are those that when given a target, he said, they go over and above board. He said, and they get more than they're asked for. And he said, and then there are those who are able to just hit their target smack on. And then there are people like you. He said, so don't forget, old son, next season you owe me one. At the start of the season, we had a lot of new faces in the dressing room, but we still all sat in numerical order, and he went through pretty much the same ritual, and he got to me. I was now wearing 9 rather than 10, and he said, McDonald, the not so new boy, 30, and don't forget you owe me one. And he wasn't going to let me ever forget that. And so we got to about Easter, and we had a couple of poor results, and that meant really that promotion was beyond us. And we had lost at Bristol City on the Friday. We had lost again on the Saturday, and on the Sunday we were in training because we had a game the following day. We used to play 3 and 4 games. Can you imagine some of the footballers of today? If they say, you've got to play 3 games in 4 days. My word, they'd have heart attacks. And so at the end of the training, Alex Stock, he came out and we were training just around the track, and he said, over here, old son, pointing to me. And he took me out into the centre circle of Kenilworth Road and kept looking over his shoulder in this empty stadium to make sure that we weren't being overheard. And he said, well, old son, promotion's out the window. And for poor little clubs like Luton Town, if we don't get promotion, then we're skint. And that means that we have to sell our best player, and that at the moment is you. And so you're going to be on your bike this summer. Now I can tell you that there are 3 clubs interested in you, and they are Manchester United, Chelsea and Newcastle United. All 3 are watching you. And he said, all you've got to do is just keep sticking it in the old onion bag until the end of the season, and you'll be playing in the top division next season. Fair enough. So I've kept sticking it in the onion bag. We played the last game of the season, and it was against Cardiff at Kenilworth Road, and we had to beat them by 2 clear goals to go into the Watney Cup instead of them. Sounds a bit like Newcastle. Watney Cup. And so we were 2-0 up, and I had got both of those goals, and then I got a third, and so it was a hat-trick, which was quite a lovely, warm thing, knowing that this was my last game in a club that I'd really enjoyed my time at. And so in the dressing room afterwards, there was no champagne, there was just a pot of tea, and I poured some into 2 cups and went over, and I gave one to Alex Stock, my manager, and I said, well, boss, I said, we didn't get promoted as we all wanted, but I said, my first tonight, I said, that gave me the 30 that you demanded for the season. I said, my second, I said, well, that was the one that I owed you from last season. I said, and the third one, well, the third one I said you can have for luck. He said, luck, you'll be needing some bloody luck where you're going, mate. He said, come and see me on Friday, I'll have some news for you. So I went into the office first thing on Friday, and Alex Stock wasn't there. He came in about an hour later, all of a lather. He said, right, he said, now listen very carefully. I've just been down at the Great Northern Hotel, down at King's Cross Station. He said, the Newcastle party, all the directors and the manager, they're down for the FA Cup final tomorrow. He said, and I've just done the deal with them. He said, I've done the deal, £185,000. Now, you get in your car, he said, get down there and sting them for every penny you can get. And so off I went, and I went down, and I asked the reception where I could find the Newcastle party, and the lass said, through that corridor, they're in the room at the end. So as I'm walking down, all of a sudden, the door frame at the far end was suddenly filled with big, broad shoulders. And I recognised a Newcastle ex-player, and he was the manager of Newcastle United, Joe Harvey. So I've walked along the corridor with my arm outstretched, and I've said, well, Mr. Harvey, I said, I'm Malcolm MacDonald, Alex Stock, the Luton manager, has asked me to come and see you. He said, and his first words to me were, what the bloody hell did you think you were doing, scoring a hat-trick in your last bloody game against Cardiff? He said, you know, your manager's been here for an hour this morning. He said, back at Easter, we had the fee agreed at £155,000. He said, you score a hat-trick in your last game, and your manager's here this morning, and he's put the fee up 10 grand a goal. Well, all I can say is that Joe wasn't complaining after the home debut.
Great stuff. Yeah, round of applause.
Terry Hibbett.
Well, when you arrived at the club, you met another club icon who gave you some advice. Tell us that story. It's a great story.
Right. So on that Friday that I've just mentioned, the day before the cup final, I signed for Newcastle, but that wasn't the deal complete. What was required was the medical. And in those days, the medical could only be held at the signing club's treatment room. So that meant, because everybody was down to watch the cup final the following day, that on the Monday, after that weekend, I would travel north and go for the medical, and then the whole situation could be finalised. And so I went back and told Alex Stock, and he said, okay. He said, well, old son, we've got something organised for you. He said, George Twigg, who sponsors the club, he's the local car dealer, and he's going to lay on his Rolls Royce. So get it all sorted out with him, and good luck to you. I said, well, thanks very much. And on the Monday, very early in the morning, I got into the Rolls Royce, and a young director of the car company drove me up. And we'd just come across the Tyne into Newcastle, and the lad, he stopped and he said, get in the back. I said, I beg your pardon. He said, get in the back, get on the back seat. And he's put a chauffeur's cap on. And so we've driven up, and we've gone up St James Boulevard, and we've then turned left, then right, and we've gone through the gates of St James Park, and he's taken this big circular route in the car park, and there was a whole gaggle of press all on the steps leading to the main entrance, and he's pulled up in front of this gaggle of press, and he said, stay where you are. And he's gone out of the car and walked the long way round and got to the back door opened it up, and out I've stepped. And a voice right in the crowd, in the middle of the crowd of press guys, said, "This is the first time I've ever seen a player actually arrive in his signing on fee." It was Bob Cass, who was then writing for The Sun. He bless him, he passed away 3 or 4 years back, and it was so sad, because he was a great fellow, Bob. I worked with him an awful lot, and I loved his company. So anyway, we went into, I went into the medical room, because that was what I was there for. And the physios and the doctor, they did all the tests and everything on me. Well, I'd never missed a game through injury up to that point. And so they passed me with flying colours. And that was the deal, completely finalised, ratified, all the paperwork signed. And it was all then to be sent off to the Football League. And I was now a Newcastle United player. Oh. And so I went through to the press room, where they had put out a table and chair similar to this, and I sat with all the press in front of me and did the press talk, and at the end of it, it sort of became a little more laid back, and we all sort of intermingled. But then, all of a sudden, it was like a parting of the Red Sea. All of the press, all just gave an avenue of space, and a guy started walking, and you could sense that everybody just totally revered him. And he's come through, and I thought, I recognise this fella. I saw him play back in 1956 when Newcastle United played in an FA Cup replay down at Fulham, and it finished 5-4 to Newcastle United. Now, can you ever imagine it happening now, what happened to me back in 1956? On the Monday at school, I was at Queen's Manor Primary School, which was just down the road from Fulham Football Club. The headmistress stood up at assembly and she said, well done to our local football team, Fulham Football Club. They got a very creditable draw in the FA Cup up at St James Park in Newcastle. All get your maps of Britain out and find out where Newcastle is. Now, she said, what I can say to you is this: if anybody wants to genuinely go on Wednesday afternoon, the kickoff's at 2 o'clock, and watch the replay, come here for your lessons in the morning, have lunch, and then and go to the ground and watch your football. Can you imagine that happening now? Dear me, not a chance in hell. But that's how it was back then. And so off I went. Dear me, red rag to a bull. I was there, and I saw a wonderful game. And yes, it finished 5-4 to Newcastle. But the right winger broke my heart. It was 4 each with a couple of minutes to go, and the goalkeeper threw in the ball, and he just sprinted all the way from one end to the other, and he suddenly lashed across into the penalty area, and a flying Vic Keeble diving header got his head to it and knocked it in the net and made it 5-4. My heart was broken. And through this gap in the press, in 1971 was the fella who had knocked the crossover, Jackie Milburn. And he came and he said, welcome to Newcastle United. He said, I can tell you now, he said, the people are going to love watching you play, but more importantly, you're going to love playing for them. He said, now, he said, it's very important that you get yourself settled down, very important. And I said, well, I intended to do some house hunting later this week. He said, good, see me here Friday, 10 o'clock. He said, and I'll show you around. And so my chauffeur on the Friday was Jackie Milburn, driving me all over Tyneside, showing me all the different areas. And so he drove me around various places, and then we went across the town more, I remember, and into Gosforth and Jesmond, and then we were going along the coast road, and he sort of did a detour around Wallsend. I don't know what he was trying to tell me. And we continued, and then he drove me around North Shields and Tynemouth and Cullercoats and Whitley Bay, and we continued up through Seaton Sluice, and he put his foot down and got past Blythe as quickly as possible. And all of a sudden there was a sign saying turn left Ashington, and that's the way that we went. And as we were getting near to Ashington, all of a sudden Jackie's left arm swung out across my face, and he said, all right, you daft southerner, you right softy, what's that? And I looked out, and it was like a football pylon, but with a wheel at the top. And I thought, oh dear me, I'm really under pressure here. And I said, I'm really not sure, Jackie. I said, but I'll hazard a guess. It's a pit wheel. He said, oh, so you're not such a daft southerner after all. He said, that's not any old pit wheel though. That's the pit wheel that used to take me and all my relations down the pit, and we used to work a mile underground, he said. And he said, but God was kind to me, he'd given me football skills, and I was able to use my skills to get me out from a mile underground, and I was able to forge a football career for myself. I even went on to win cup finals at Wembley, get medals, and play for my country. He said, so he really was good to me, was God. He said, but he said, there's still my friends and my family, they're still down there and they're working to this very day. And he said, now let me tell you something about playing for Newcastle. He said, get yourself changed for your first game, he said, and come down that tunnel, he said, and you'll hear a cheer that you won't hear anywhere else. And when you're out on the pitch, he said, your job, quite simply, is to get the ball, run at defenders, beat them, get to the penalty area, and start raining shots on the goal. He said, and you'll miss with some, you'll hit the woodwork, the keeper will save them, but sooner or later, the goals will start going in. He said, because, he said, why I'm telling you this is, he said, they are working down the pit, never seeing the sunshine from Monday to Friday, and on a Saturday they come out, they get a week of muck off them, and on the Saturday they get on the bus, they go into the centre of Newcastle, they'll have a couple of pints, get up to St James's Park, and there they are on the terraces watching you, he said, and you are the highlight of their week. Make the most of it. Make the most of it, young man, because they never see the sunshine. So sun, shine for them. And the words stuck with me, and sure enough, when I did come out that first time through down that tunnel, there is no other stadium that has that noise. The trouble is, what I think's happening now, you're scaring the bastards.
Let's talk about that home debut, Mal. I'm sure everybody would love to hear your recollections of that fantastic day at St James's Park against Liverpool.
Right, you did actually mention a name a little earlier, and I've forgotten to mention him, and that was Terry Hibbett.
All right, okay.
Yeah. So and I'll come on to the Liverpool game, but I hadn't been with the club very long. We'd started pre-season training, and Joe Harvey came in through the dressing room door, and he came and he stood in front of me as I was getting changed after training. And Joe, when he had something to impart, he would put his hands in his trouser pockets and he would just rock back and forth on his heels. And he said, "Well, Mal," he said, "got news for you." He said, "I have just signed the man who is going to make the bullets for you to fire." Isn't that a wonderful line? Beautiful line. And all the players had heard, and we were all quite agog. And we said, "Well, who is it? Who is it, boss? Who is it? Who is it?" And Joe Harvey started walking towards the door, and he said, "I've just signed Terry Hibbett from Leeds United for the paltry sum of 30 grand. We were seriously impressed. Seriously impressed with that. And so he's got to the door and he's opened it and gone half out, and then he's put his head back in and he said, "Mind, it caused trouble in an empty house." And out he went. Well, Joe never said a truer word. By heavens, he did cause trouble in an empty house. I remember at Wolves one time, Hibby, dear, he had a mouth on him that just wouldn't stop. And it didn't matter who was in front of him, he would abuse them, insult them. Oh, he could give them some right stick. And at Wolves, he did something to me which had happened to me when I was at Fulham. I mentioned Fulham a bit earlier, and it was at a very difficult time. And my boyhood hero, Johnny Haynes, he was in the side. And it's a strange thing to play with your boyhood hero. But Hainesy, he was getting on. And others in the side were getting on, and they were just trying to survive, and the last thing they needed was youngsters coming into the side. And Hainesy, his passing ability, and I never knew really whether he was right or left footed because he was immaculate with both, and he could just ping passes with such accuracy. Wonderful player. But I happened to be playing outside left in this particular game, and he has knocked a pass diagonally across the field, and I am now sprinting up the left wing, going like a steam train, and about 3 yards from the ball, it's just run over the line, and Hainesy has gone like this to the crowd, and the crowd have all given me stick, and I thought, nobody will ever do that to me ever again. We're playing at Wolves, and Terry Hibbett has gone ping with this Johnny Haynes type ball, and I am flying up the left wing, and it's just run out of play just before I got to it, and Terry Hibbett has gone. like this to all the crowd. And I thought, right, you little shit, I'm after you. So we got into the dressing room. And Wolves had a strange thing, that there was like a bench seat like this, and then very high, but the hooks were high up on the wall, and you had to stand on this bench seat to hang your clothes on. And so in the dressing room afterwards, I am absolutely seething. And I thought, right, I'm going to have the little sod. So I've gone marching across, and I've got hold of Hibby, and I have stepped up onto this, and I've hung him on the hook by his shirt. And he's helpless, he can't move, he's stuck on this high hook. And I've gone, don't you ever, you little bastard, don't you ever do that to me again out on a football field. And he's sort of wriggling, and I'm stepped back, and I'm going to go stepping up on, and I am going to right-hand him. And as I've pulled my arm back, John Tudor has grabbed me, and I've thrust forward, but had to stop because of John's weight. And John has gone flying over my shoulder and has knotted Terry, who was unconscious now on this hook, and John's lying on the floor, unconscious as well. And I hadn't hit anybody. Anyway, but he could annoy the life out of me, could Tibby. But he was a great player, great passer of the ball, and we had an understanding which was second to none. And I just loved playing with a little fella. I really did. And against Liverpool in my home debut, he has slipped a fabulous little ball which enticed Larry Lloyd to go for it, but it allowed me just to nick it over Larry Lloyd's foot, go round him, and I cracked it from his second into the far top corner. And that was it was just an absolute beauty of a pass that invited the centre half to go for it, and Hibby knew that he would never get it, and he was an absolute ace. And of course, who was at Hillsborough for the Burnley semi-final? Anybody there? No?
Yeah, one there.
Ah, you were there. Do you remember the pass from Terry Hibbett? Ah, where the centre half jumped on my back. And the reason for that was, it was Colin Waldron, that Terry Hibbett, soaking wet, wasn't 7 stone, and he just didn't look as if he had the power nor the strength to hit a ball as far as he could. But with Terry, it wasn't power or strength that was required. He had immaculate timing. There was one time Joe Harvey came into the dressing room, and we're getting changed for training in the middle of the week, and Joe, he's come in, he's gone, effing little bandit. He's a right little sod and a bandit. He bloody lies, he was telling me. And we've gone, what are you muttering about, boss? He said, that bloody Terry Hibbett, he's a bandit. I said, what do you mean he's a bandit? He said, I played golf with him yesterday. He said, and as you know, he said, I play off 6 and I'm a big hitter. Him, he told me he was playing off 16. He said, he outdrove me off every bloody tee. He said, 7 stone, soaking wet he is. And he was really upset, was Joe. But of course it was just timing with Hibby. Just perfect timing, whether it was golf or tennis or football, it didn't matter. And he just had that wonderful relationship with a ball. I I love playing with him, and at Burnley, and you'll remember, Burnley were absolutely brilliant on the day. They were brilliant. The star of the game was William McFall, who kept them out. He was absolutely phenomenal with the saves that he was making. And it was frustrating Burnley. And all of a sudden, Burnley have got a corner, it's headed out, and Terry Hibbett in the D has, as the ball has come down, he's just half volleyed it. And Colin Waldron, marking me on the halfway line, thought that he could get forward because the ball would drop short, and it didn't. It just kept travelling, and he's realised that he's done it wrong. And so, as it's coming over his head, he's turned, run, and jumped on my back. Fortunately, I was able to rid myself of him, bloody parasite, and went through. I hit a shot. I was off balance, hit a shot. It came back off the goalkeeper, and I went round him and then slid it in, and that made it 1-0. And you could just see all the Burnley hearts that they were breaking at that moment in time. And then Terry McDermott knocked a super ball for me a bit later on, and I scored another. And that made it 2-0. And Burnley, they were absolutely bereft. They were brilliant on the day, and we stuffed them. Oh, so sad.
I think just with the time, what we'll do is we'll finish the first half off with the story about how Terry Hibbett left the club, because I know that's a story which I think the public would like to hear, and it's not a very pleasant one.
No, it was 1975-76 season, and Joe Harvey in the summer, he was sacked, and nobody at the club could believe it, and so Joe was gone, and I had it organised to go in the summer, to go out to Johannesburg in South Africa to play for a club over there, because I didn't like long layoffs. I wanted to keep my fitness up, and I needed to keep playing. I wanted to keep my touch and shooting at its best. And so I've gone over there for a few weeks and playing for Lusitano, and we used to train in the evenings. So one afternoon I'm lying on the bed and the phone's rung. So I picked it up and I said hello, and a very familiar voice said, hello Mal, John Gibson here from the Evening Chronicle. I said, hello Gibbo. I said, so what's going on? He said, well, I've got some news for you. I said, oh yeah, what's that? He said, the new manager has been appointed. I said, oh, really? I said, go on, tell me. He said, no. He said, I'm going to give you 3 guesses. I said, oh, right. I said, first guess. Brian Clough. He said, no, it's not Brian Clough. I said, okay, then it's got to be Bobby Robson. That's my second guess. He said, no, it's not Bobby Robson either. I said, oh, whoa, last chance. I said, oh, please don't tell me it's Jackie Charlton. I don't think I could cope with that one. He said, no, it's not Jackie Charlton either. I said, well, then I give up. He said, they have appointed Gordon Lee. I said, Gordon who? I'd never heard of the man. Never heard of him. The back page headline in the following day's Evening Chronicle, in the biggest, thickest black letters you have ever seen on a newspaper, read, Gordon who, question mark, says Supermac from Johannesburg. Oh, cheers, John. Thanks very much. So anyway, When my time finished over in South Africa, which was about 5 days before I was due back for pre-season training at St James, I got back and I thought I'd go in and just let myself be known to the new manager. I'll introduce myself. So in I went, parked, and I read the journal that morning, and there were some photographs in it of some of the new people that were arriving, and in particular Gordon Lee's coach, who was Richard Dinnis. And so I'm walking along, and blow me, the double doors have opened, the main entrance, and coming out of there is the fella in the photograph, and I am not good with names. I never have been. And so I've looked and I thought, oh, it's the fella in the paper. So I've gone across and I said, hello, Malcolm McDonald. I said, it's nice to meet you, Dennis. I thought his name was Dennis Richards. And it wasn't Richard Dennis. I thought, oh, dear me, I've cocked that one up. So anyway, I've gone in and I've knocked on the manager's door, and there was a come in. So I've gone in and I've said, Malcolm McDonald, I said, I just thought I'd pop in before we start training and welcome you to the club, and I wish you all the very best. He said, never mind that. He said, tell me about Terry Hibbett. I hear he's a troublemaker. I said, all you need to know about Terry Hibbett is he's got the best left peg in the country. I said, he is a fabulous little player. I love playing with him. He makes me loads of goals. And I'm not going to get involved in anything else. All you need to know is he's a great player. And so I walked out. I thought, I'm not happy with that kind of reaction from a new manager. And it was obvious that Gordon Lee had got it in for Terry before he had even met the fella. And he was just going on whatever chit-chat there was, bit of rumour, not nice at all. And we were playing Derby County later in that season, down at the baseball ground. And after about 5 minutes, Mickey Burns of all people has got sent off for a tackle. He couldn't tackle a dinner, Mickey Burns, and he's got sent off. Ha! He was soft as Clark's him, he really was. Anyway, so he's sent off. We're down to 10 men playing against a very, very good Derby side. And they've got a goal up, and we've battled away, and we've got a goal back, and they went another one up later in the game, and we're battling away, and we've got that one back. And Hibby, he's taken on Mickey Burns' role in midfield plus his own, and he's playing the game of two men. He was absolutely brilliant that day. And Derby, in the last 2 or 3 minutes, they've snuck one in, and they finished up winning the game 3-2 against us, 10 men Newcastle. And on the final whistle, Hibby literally collapsed in the centre of the pitch. So I've gone over to him and I've helped getting him to his feet, and I said, come on, Hibby. I said, you've been absolutely magnificent today. I said, I'll tell you what, I think I've seen you have some great games, but that was your greatest. You were absolutely fabulous. And it's just a shame that we lost, because your performance deserved an awful lot better. And I'm helping him off the pitch, and we got into the dressing room, and he could hardly find the energy to take his wet and sweaty gear off. And most of the players, they'd gone in the bath, and we joined them a bit later, and then most of them had gone out, and it was a very deep plunge bath at Derby, very deep, and there was a metal ladder that came down the inside of it. And And we were sat there and we were just chatting away. There was just myself and Hibby. Everybody else was gone. They were getting dressed. And finally, I've had to give Terry a hand to get up the ladder. He was so shattered. And we got through to the dressing room. And the kit used to be packed in like massive hampers, wicker hampers. There were two of them, and one had been packed and the other was on top of it, packed, and on top of that was a brown paper parcel. And Hibby, as he's going past, there was just the physios and Richard Dinnis, the coach, and as Hibby started talking, Gordon Lee came in through the dressing room door and started walking across. And Hibby, pointing to the parcel, said, because it was so obviously a pair of boots. And so he said, hey, who's not travelling back to Newcastle then? Who's had the nightmare? And Gordon Lee has come across, all the others just went absolutely red-faced. And he's picked up the brown paper parcel, stuck it under Hibby's arm. He says, you're not going back to Newcastle. He said, Freddie Goodwin, the manager of Birmingham's outside. He said, I've just done a deal with him. He said, go and talk to him. He said, I don't want you at Newcastle. And Hibby was absolutely heartbroken. And Gordon Lee walked out. And Hibby, he just slumped onto his chair, and he just said, I don't believe what's just happened. He said, I haven't dreamt it, have I? I said, no, Hibby, you haven't. I said, and I can't believe it either. I said, it's absolutely outrageous to do it when you've just come off a pitch, having had probably one of the best games ever of your life. And anyway, we got dressed. Hibby went to speak to Freddie Goodwin, but beforehand I said, now you hot-headed little so-and-so, I said, you stay calm, don't make any rash decisions tonight. I said, go and hear what Freddie Goodwin has got to say, but then you've got to go home and you've got to discuss it with your missus. Come on, you've got kids who are at school, you've got to think about the family and what you want to do, how you want to do it. Yeah, he said, you're right, thanks, Mal. He said, I'm not going to do anything silly. I said, good. So anyway, off Hibby went to talk to Freddie Goodwin, and I went into the players' bar, and before I could get a drink, Gordon Lee and Richard Dinnis come in, and they said, right, everybody everybody onto the bus. We're going, we've got a long journey home. So they've ushered us out. Me, I'm gasping for a drink. I've just played 90 minutes of football with a man short and didn't get anything. So anyway, we get onto the bus and Gordon Lee has come on last and he's sitting down and he said to the driver, Bob Davis was his name, bless him, lovely fella. He said, right driver, off we go. And we went, whoa, the wee man's still inside talking with Freddie Goodwin. Said, come on, let's wait for him. He's going back to Newcastle tonight. He's going back to his family. Well, if he wants to go back, says Gordon Lee, and find his own way. Driver, drive on. And so Bob, bless him, he sort of suddenly found a bit of kangaroo juice and just sort of very slowly went a few yards up the road, buying as much time as possible, and finally Hibby has come out of the players' entrance, and he's looked around. There's the bus, and he's gone running for the bus. And Gordon Lee said to the driver, he said, driver, if you value your job, you will drive off now and leave the little shit behind. And I'd never ever known a player, and particularly a good and a great player, be treated so abominably as that. And there was no way I could forgive Gordon Lee whatsoever. No way. And I determined there that Hibby he'd be going, but I would be following him. By the end of the season, I'd be going as well. Gordon Lee was just fragmenting what to me was a terrific dressing room and a good team and also a great club. And he was doing his best to destroy it. So anyway, a bit later in the season, we were getting changed after a morning of training, and Gordon Lee has come into the dressing room and he stood in the middle. Now, how it worked at Newcastle was we had a first team squad of 13 usually, and those 13 would get changed in the home dressing room, and all the reserves and all the juniors and apprentices, they would get changed in the away dressing room. And so Gordon Lee, he said in the dressing room, "Is Aidan McCaffrey Irish?" Now Aidan McCaffrey was 18 years of age, playing in the reserve side and was getting changed in the other dressing room. So we've all looked around at each other and we've shook our heads and we've said, "No, he's not Irish. No, he's a Geordie, born and bred." "Why do you want to know if he's Irish?" He said, "I want to nominate him for the Irish international team." I said, "Well, he owns his own boots and that'll get anybody into the Irish team." Gordon Lee says, "Well, if he's not Irish, are his parents Irish?" Oh, sorry, because we said that he was a Geordie, born and bred, and he was a Geordie, born and bred. So he said, so Gordon Lee says, "Are his parents Irish?" And we've looked around at each other. We're like, no, they're not Irish either. And Gordon Lee says, "How dare he not be Irish and have a name like Aidan McCaffrey?" I said, "Oh, for heaven's sake, Gordon Lee." I said, "My name is Malcolm Ian MacDonald. You can't get a more Scottish name than that. And I play for England." He said, "You should not play for England with a name like yours." Tommy Cassidy said, "Excuse me, boss, but how many times have you played for China?"
That's a great place to finish the first half. We're also going to finish the first half of the show, NUFC Matters, live on Facebook. We'll be back online at 9:15. But for the moment, thanks from me and Malcolm and all the audience at Scotchwood Social Club. Okay, Malcolm's going to